There are spaces you enter willingly believing you are safe while they slowly dismantle your mind. You click this video expecting physical locations, war zones, dying economies, bad neighborhoods. You are looking at the wrong map. The common belief is that ruin comes from a sudden violent external catastrophe, a market crash, a sudden enemy, a physical threat that forces you to your knees. It is a lie. Ruin is an infection. It is contracted in the psychological environments you refuse to leave, the places you walk into every single day that are engineered to destroy your ambition, your clarity, and your power. Machiavelli warned rulers about the hidden traps of human association. Today, I'm going to expose the invisible rooms that are quietly tearing you apart. But pay close attention to the second place. It is the one you are probably sitting in right now. Place 1, the Martyr's Court, the echo chamber of grievance. Where do you go when you fail? When the plan falls apart? When you are overlooked? When the market turns against you and your pride is fractured? You go to the people who understand, the ones who nod, the ones who pour the drinks and tell you that the game was rigged from the start. Welcome to the first place of ruin, the Martyr's Court. This is an environment built entirely on the currency of shared grievance. A friend group, a specific online community, a workplace break room. It is a space where everyone is bleeding, but absolutely no one is looking for a bandage. They are only looking for an audience. It feels like therapy. It feels like profound validation. It is actually psychological castration. Machiavelli observed in his discourses on Libby that human nature leans heavily toward blaming fortune. Men generally blame fortune for the evils they suffer and praise their own wisdom for their successes. When you surround yourself with people who validate your excuses, your ambition starves to death. You see, the Martyr's Court is incredibly comfortable. In this room, your failure is never your fault. It is the economy. It is the algorithm. It is your childhood. It is the corrupt system. But comfort is a paralytic. Look at the tragic fall of Piero Soderini, the statesman of Florence during Machiavelli's time. Soderini was a good man, a fair man. He surrounded himself with moralists and idealists. When the ruthless Medici family approached the gates of Florence with an army, Soderini did not act with the necessary aggression. He sat in his court of high-minded peers, complaining about the cruelty of the world, waiting for his inherent goodness to save him. It didn't. He was ousted, exiled, and his republic was dismantled. He died in a sanctuary of his own making, a victim of his absolute refusal to adapt to a violent reality. When you enter the Martyr's Court, you surrender your agency. You become a passive spectator of your own tragedy. You stop asking, "How do I weaponize this failure?" and start asking, "Who can I blame for this pain?" The people in this room do not actually want you to succeed. If you win, you become a massive threat. You prove that the cage door was unlocked the entire time. You invalidate their entire identity, which is built on the foundation of being oppressed. They will hate you for your escape, so they keep you sedated with sympathy. Sympathy is a drug that bypasses your logical brain. It mimics the sensation of love. But it is a leash. Get out of the circle of victims. If the people around you are not actively drawing blood in the arena, you should not be speaking to them about the battle. The moment you catch yourself seeking a pat on the back for a failure, recognize the trap. Swallow the loss. Own it. Does it hurt? Good. It is supposed to. Pain is the only teacher that does not lie. Do not let the Martyr's Court numb the lesson. But if the first place destroys you with sympathy, the next place destroys you with something far more intoxicating, something you actively, desperately chase. Place 2, the arena of unearned status, the Court of Flattery. We arrive at the second place, the most dangerous trap ever designed by human vanity, the Court of Flattery. Machiavelli dedicated a specific brutal chapter of The Prince to this exact threat. Courts are always full of flatterers, he warned. Men are so happily absorbed in their own affairs and indulge in such self-deception that it is difficult for them not to fall victim to this plague. You hear the word flattery and you picture historical kings with servants bowing at their feet. You think you are immune because you don't wear a crown. You are not. For you, the Court of Flattery is not a literal palace. It is the environment that praises your potential instead of your execution. It is the parents who tell you you are a genius just for passing a baseline test. It is the social media followers who like your announcement of a grand project you haven't even started. It is the friends who tell you your terrible business idea is brilliant because they are too cowardly to hurt your feelings. Why will this ruin you? Because dopamine is completely blind. Your brain cannot tell the difference between the neurochemical reward of talking about a victory and the reward of actually achieving it. When you inhabit a space that gives you a standing ovation for simply existing, you lose the hunger required to become dangerous. You become soft, fat, predictable. Consider the history of King Perseus of Macedon. He inherited a vast empire and a formidable army, but he surrounded himself with sycophants, men who told him his tactics were flawless, that the Roman Republic was weak, that his legacy was preordained by the gods. When he finally met the Romans at the Battle of Pydna, the brutal, unfailing reality of war shattered his fragile ego. His army was annihilated in a single hour. He fled the battlefield crying, blaming everyone but himself. He wasn't ruined by the Roman swords. He was ruined by the applause of his own court long before the battle even began. If you are the smartest man in the room, you are in the wrong room. But if you are the most praised man in the room, you are in a slaughterhouse. They are fattening your ego for the kill. Why do you stay? Why do you drink the poison? Because you crave validation. Because you lack internal certainty. You want someone to look at you and say you are on the right path. You are special. Stop asking the world for permission to be great. When people tell you how great you are, your psychological defenses lower. You stop checking your blind spots. You stop grinding. You start believing your own myth. And the moment you believe your own myth, reality will hit you with the force of a freight train. You must actively seek out rooms where you are nothing, where your past achievements mean absolute zero, where the air is thin, the standards are ruthless, and the criticism is surgical. Machiavelli advised the wise leader to choose intelligent advisors and give them the freedom to tell the truth, but only when asked. Control the feedback loop. Demand the brutal truth, but fiercely govern who is allowed to speak it. Flee from unearned praise. It is a slow-acting venom. It coats your mind in sugar while it rots your ambition from the inside out. But what happens when you avoid the flatterers? What happens when you decide to get serious, to buckle down, to finally build the empire? You often step right into the third trap, a place that looks exactly like progress, but is actually a prison. Place 3, the Sanctuary of Hypotheticals, the paralysis room. Where does potential actually go to die? It doesn't die on the battlefield. It doesn't die in spectacular, fiery public failure. It dies in the war room. Welcome to the Sanctuary of Hypotheticals. This is the place of endless agonizing preparation. The whiteboard covered in perfect strategies. The hard drive filled with downloaded courses you haven't finished. The notebooks packed with brilliant ideas waiting for the perfect timing. The glow of the screen at 300 AM. As you research your competition for the 100th time, you tell yourself you are researching. You tell yourself you are optimizing. You call it strategy. You are lying. You are hiding. Machiavelli despised hesitation. He argued that fortune is a violent river. When it is calm, you build dams and dikes. But when the flood comes, you must act forcefully and decisively. The man who sits on the riverbank endlessly calculating the exact velocity of the water will simply drown in his own math. In the Sanctuary of Hypotheticals, Everything feels intensely safe. Why? Because nothing is real. You cannot be judged on a prototype that never launches. You cannot be rejected by the market if you never ship the product. You cannot lose the investment if you just keep analyzing the charts forever. Perfectionism is not a standard of excellence. It is a symptom of deep unrecognized cowardice. You are terrified of the ugly, unpolished reality of the beginner's stage. You want to skip the humiliation of being bad at something and teleport straight to mastery. Look at the Italian mercenary captains of the 15th century, the Condieri. Some of them spent their entire lives studying Roman formations. They calculated the perfect angle of the sun. They read ancient texts on war logistics. Then they stepped onto the mud of the battlefield against uneducated, brutal adversaries who simply wanted to tear their throats out. The scholars were butchered. Theory crumbles the exact moment it gets punched in the mouth. When you spend too much time in the Sanctuary of Hypotheticals, you develop a fatal arrogance. You think you know how the game is played because you have memorized the rule book. But reading the menu does not mean you have tasted the food. The map is not the territory. The market does not care about your perfect plan. The world does not care about your pristine spreadsheet. It cares about execution. It cares about what you can physically manifest into reality. To escape this room, you must embrace the philosophy of the aggressive strike. Launch before you feel ready. Speak before the sentence is perfectly constructed. Execute while the plan is still 70% complete. Machiavelli stated it plainly. It is better to be impetuous than cautious. Momentum forgives mistakes. Paralysis forgives absolutely nothing. Stop whiteboarding your life. Break the glass. Step into the arena. The cuts and bruises you take in the real world will teach you more in 5 minutes than 5 years of hypothetical planning. Once you finally leave the planning phase and start taking action, you will inevitably encounter resistance. And in your exhaustion, you will look around for a place to rest. This brings us to the fourth ruinous environment. Place 4, the Hall of False Equivalencies. The comparison trap. The fourth place will ruin you not by stopping your movement, but by completely twisting your direction. The Hall of False Equivalencies. This is the modern digital landscape, the endless mind-numbing scroll, the environment where you measure your raw, unfiltered, behind-the-scenes reality against someone else's heavily edited highlight reel. But it goes much deeper than just social media envy. Machiavelli understood the supreme danger of looking at the outward appearance of other rulers. He warned that men are so quick to desire the wealth and status of others that they blindly copy their methods without ever understanding the context of their success. You look at a 20-year-old millionaire on your screen. You see the cars, you see the lifestyle. You do not see the leverage. You do not see the rich parents. You do not see the hidden bankruptcies. You do not see the sociopathic lack of ethics that might have paved their road. In the Hall of False Equivalencies, you are tricked into running a race you were never equipped for on a track you never chose. Envy is the ultimate thief of strategy. When you operate out of envy, you stop playing your own game. You abandon your unique innate advantages to mimic someone else's. This makes you entirely predictable. You become a second-rate version of your competitor. And a second-rate version is always slaughtered by the original. Think of the historical blunder of the ancient city of Carthage. They were undisputed masters of the sea. Their navy was unmatched. Their vast wealth flowed from maritime trade. But when they fought Rome, a brutally effective land-based power, they let their envy of Roman territorial dominance drag them into massive infantry wars. They tried to out-Rome Rome. They abandoned their greatest strength to fight in the enemy's preferred theater. Carthage was burned to the ground, its fields sown with salt. When you let comparison dictate your actions, you salt your own earth. You start making decisions based on what looks impressive to people you don't even respect. You buy things to project a status you haven't earned. You pivot your business model because a trend is hot, completely abandoning the core competency that made you strong in the first place. This is strategic suicide. How do you survive this haul? You must cultivate a ruthless, almost arrogant tunnel vision. You must look at the achievements of others as mere data points, not as moral judgments on your own worth. When you see someone winning, strip away the emotion. Deconstruct their victory coldly. What did they do right? What mechanics can you steal? What flaws are they hiding behind the flash? Turn their success into your textbook. Stop measuring your chapter 1 against their chapter 20. Machiavelli taught that a prince must rely on his own arms, not the arms of others. Your timeline is your own. Your weapons are your own. The precise moment you stop looking sideways is the moment you become truly dangerous. You are beginning to see the architecture of your own self-sabotage. These 4 places, the Martyr's Court, the Court of Flattery, the Sanctuary of Hypotheticals, and the Hall of False Equivalencies. They do not look like traps when you enter them. They look like comfort. They look like friendship. They look like preparation. They look like ambition. That is exactly what makes them lethal. The devil does not come dressed in a red cape with pitchfork horns. He comes dressed as everything you ever wished for. He comes disguised as the path of least resistance. You must understand that your mind is a territory under constant brutal siege. Every environment you enter is attempting to colonize your thoughts. They want your attention. They want your energy. They want your absolute compliance. To become mentally untouchable, you have to transform yourself into a hostile environment for weakness. You have to look at the people around you, the content you endlessly consume, the physical and digital spaces you inhabit, and ask a single brutal question. Is this sharpening my blade, or is it dulling my edge? If it is dulling your edge, you must cut it out without apology, without hesitation. It will hurt. You will lose friends. You will be called cold. You will be accused of thinking you are better than everyone else. Let them talk. The sheep always complain when the wolf leaves the herd. They do not understand that you are not leaving to be arrogant. You are leaving to survive. You survived the first 4 rooms. You cut the dead weight. You stopped asking for sympathy. You stopped listening to the flatterers. You broke out of the planning phase, and you shattered the mirror of envy. You think you are free. You are not, because the next place does not use your ego against you. It uses your gratitude. Place 5. The Chamber of Indebtedness, the favor trap. Where do you go when you need a shortcut? When you are tired of the grind? When a door is locked and someone offers you the key? No strings attached, just a favor between friends. Just a mentor helping a protégé. Just an investor who believes in your vision. Welcome to the Chamber of Indebtedness. Most people believe ruin comes from their enemies. They scan the horizon for the knife, but the most lethal wounds do not come from a blade. They come from a gift. Machiavelli observed the mechanics of human obligation with chilling clarity. He understood that men are bound to you by the benefits they receive, but he also knew the dark inverse of that law. When you receive a benefit, you are instantly wearing a collar. In Renaissance Italy, power was not just held by men with swords. It was held by men with ledgers. Look at Cosimo de' Medici. He did not conquer Florence with an army. He conquered it with a bank. He was brilliant. He appeared entirely humble. He rode a mule instead of a horse. He dressed simply, but behind closed doors he was quietly loaning massive sums of money to the nobility, the merchants, the rising politicians. He handed out favors like candy. He bailed out failing businesses. He paid off the debts of influential men. He was called the father of the fatherland. But the father owned the children. The moment someone dared to oppose Cosmo politically, he didn't send assassins. He simply called in the loan instantly in full. Men who thought they were independent titans of industry were reduced to beggars overnight. They were ruined completely and silently by the very generosity they had celebrated. When you enter the Chamber of Indebtedness, you are selling your future autonomy for present convenience. You take the job from the toxic uncle because it pays well. You accept the free vacation from the manipulative partner. You take the funding from the investor who demands unspoken loyalty. You tell yourself it is just business. You tell yourself you are using them. You are not using them. They are buying equity in your soul. What happens when you want to leave the relationship? What happens when you want to take your business in a direction the investor hates? What happens when you finally stand up to the toxic family member? They pull the chain. After everything I did for you, I made you. You owe me. Guilt is the most paralyzing neurochemical state a human being can experience. It weaponizes your own morality against you. You will stay in abusive relationships, dead-end partnerships, and draining environments for years simply because your psychological ledger says you are in debt. The people who offer you unearned shortcuts do not want to see you fly. They want to clip your wings and keep you in a golden cage so you can sing for them whenever they demand it. Nothing is free. The universe operates on an absolute law of exchange. If you do not pay with money, you pay with your freedom. If you do not pay with effort, you pay with your dignity. How do you escape this chamber? You must become fanatical about your independence. You must view every unearned gift as a potential Trojan horse. When someone offers you a favor that seems too good to be true, refuse it. Pay the market price. Suffer the delay. Take the stairs instead of the elevator they offer. If you must accept help, define the terms of repayment immediately. Put it in writing. Settle the debt as fast as humanly possible. Machiavelli advised the prince to be the one giving the favors, never the one receiving them. You must be the creditor, never the debtor. Buy your freedom in cash, in sweat, in blood, but never under any circumstances buy it with your obligation. A man who owes nothing fears no one. But there is one final place. If you escape the debtors, if you clear your ledger, if you build your empire on your own terms, you will inevitably step onto the grandest stage of all. And this is where 99% of powerful people meet their end. Place 6, the altar of public opinion, the transparency panopticon. We have reached the abyss, the final place of ruin. You built the fortress. You are disciplined. You are cold. But you are human, and deep in your primal brain, there is a tribal instinct that screams for acceptance. You want the village to love you. You want the masses to understand your vision. You want to be seen as the good guy. Welcome to the altar of public opinion. This is the modern obsession with living fully perceived. It is the compulsion to explain your boundaries, the desperate need to apologize when someone misinterprets your actions, the desire to be relatable. It is the most efficient suicide machine ever designed. Machiavelli held a profound, unapologetic contempt for the unpredictable nature of the masses. He wrote, "The nature of the people is variable, and whilst it is easy to persuade them, it is difficult to fix them in that persuasion." The crowd is not a rational entity. The crowd is a beast driven purely by shifting emotional winds. Let us dissect the terrifying fate of Girolamo Savonarola. In the late 15th century, Savonarola, a Dominican friar, rose to absolute power in Florence. He did not use wealth like the Medici. He used the altar of public opinion. He preached fiery sermons against luxury, corruption, and sin. He tapped into the public's outrage. He made them feel righteous. The public loved him. They cheered as he organized the bonfire of the vanities, where citizens threw their art, books, and fine clothing into a massive fire in the city square. Savonarola rode the wave of the mob's moral superiority. He thought he was untouchable because the people were on his side. He forgot that the beast is always hungry. When Florence suffered economic hardship, and when the Pope excommunicated him, the political climate shifted. The same public that wept at his sermons suddenly felt bored. They felt restricted. The mob needed a new spectacle. They turned on him instantly. The very citizens who had worshipped him stormed his convent. They dragged him into the exact same plaza where the bonfire of the vanities had burned. They hanged him from a cross and lit a fire underneath him. The public will build your pedestal, and they will use the wood from that pedestal to build your scaffold. When you live on the altar of public opinion, you are handing the remote control of your emotional state to 1,000,000 strangers who do not even understand their own minds. Why are you apologizing for your ambition? Why are you writing long paragraphs explaining your life choices to people who dedicate 0 seconds a day to building their own? To be relatable is to be average. To be understood by the masses is to operate at the lowest common denominator. You think transparency makes you authentic. It doesn't. Transparency makes you a target. When you explain yourself, you are asking for permission. When you seek mass approval, you are subconsciously signaling that their judgment holds more weight than your own conviction. The moment you flinch because of a comment, a rumor, or a misunderstanding, the mob smells blood. They will test your boundaries. They will demand more apologies. They will demand that you shrink yourself to make their mediocrity feel comfortable. Machiavelli advised that a ruler must not flinch from being called cruel if it keeps his empire united. With a few exemplary executions, he will be more merciful than those who through too much mercy allow disorders to arise. Apply this to your own psychology. You must not mind being the villain in someone else's story. You must not mind being called cold, arrogant, or unreachable. When you cut a toxic person out of your life, they will tell the world you are a monster. Let them. Do not correct the narrative. Do not defend yourself. When you raise your prices and lose the cheap clients, they will call you greedy. Let them. When you go silent to build your empire, they will say you change. Let them. Silence in the face of public misunderstanding is the ultimate display of psychological dominance. The weak rush to defend their reputation. The strong know that reputation is just a shadow. The body casting the shadow is what matters. Step off the altar. Stop bleeding for the crowd. Stop trying to prove your goodness to a world that only respects power. You must embrace the cold. You must become entirely comfortable with being misunderstood. When you stop caring how you are perceived by the many, you consolidate your power for the few who actually matter. You become a ghost to the masses and a god in your own reality. Look at the map we have unrolled. The Martyr's Court, the Court of Flattery, the Sanctuary of Hypotheticals, the Hall of False Equivalencies, the Chamber of Indebtedness, the altar of public opinion. 6 places engineered to strip you of your agency. 6 psychological slaughterhouses designed to keep you pacified, fearful, and dependent. You have been wandering in and out of them for years. You thought your exhaustion was physical. You thought your anxiety was a chemical imbalance. You thought your lack of progress was a lack of talent. It was none of those things. It was your geography. You were simply trying to plant seeds in poisoned soil. You cannot outwork a toxic environment. You cannot outmeditate manipulation. You cannot positively affirm your way out of a room designed to crush you. The only solution is amputation. Machiavelli did not teach men how to survive the storm. He taught them how to become the storm. To become the storm, you must ruthlessly curate the spaces you inhabit. You must view your attention as a sovereign nation. Secure the borders. If a friend group demands that you complain to fit in, leave the group. If an environment claps for your potential but demands no execution, burn the bridge. If a situation requires you to owe someone your dignity, walk away empty-handed. If the crowd demands your apology for your success, give them your silence. This requires a level of ruthlessness that will terrify the people who used to know you. They will say you have lost your mind. They will say you are brainwashed. They are reacting to their loss of access to you. Your availability used to be their entertainment. Your struggles used to be their comfort. Your willingness to stay small was the glue holding their fragile egos together. When you leave these 6 places, you will experience a profound, shocking emptiness. The noise will stop. The drama will vanish. The constant buzzing anxiety of trying to please everyone will evaporate. You will be left alone. And that isolation is the laboratory of the great. In that emptiness, you will finally hear your own voice. You will finally feel the terrifying weight of your own potential. You will no longer be reacting to the traps set by others. You will be building the architecture of your own domain. You transition from the pawn, trying to navigate the board, to the hand moving the pieces. You clicked on this video looking for external threats. You wanted a list of things outside yourself to avoid. But true Machiavellian power requires a brutal mirror. I have shown you the 6 places that will ruin you. But where do these places actually exist? They are not physical buildings. You cannot find them on a GPS. They exist entirely within the boundaries of your own choices. You built the Martyr's Court every time you blame the world. You built the Court of Flattery every time you sought cheap praise. You built the altar of public opinion every time you checked to see if they liked you. The world did not trap you. You handed the world the blueprints to your mind, and you asked them to build the cage. You are the architect of your own ruin, which means you are also the architect of your own empire. You hold the absolute power to dismantle these rooms today, right now. You can walk out of the door and never look back. But as you stand in the ruins of the places you used to inhabit, as the dust settles and the silence stretches out before you, a new question emerges. You have learned how to protect your mind from the world. But what happens when the greatest threat is no longer the people around you? What happens when you look into the void you just created and you realize that the most dangerous, manipulative, and ruthless enemy you will ever face is the one looking back at you in the mirror? Are you prepared to go to war with yourself? If this opened your eyes, understand this is only what I can show publicly. There are videos I cannot upload for everyone. There are aspects of dark psychology that I simply cannot discuss publicly on YouTube without being censored or demonetized. The algorithm suppresses the most powerful information. Those exist behind the join button. If you're still here, you're not like the others. Subscribe if you haven't. But if you want what's hidden, click the join button and step into the architect level. You will unlock exclusive uncensored videos that dive into the deepest parts of the human psyche. Most won't. That's the point.